Alright, I promise this one will be the last Doom mod I cover for a while, but I figured I'd save the unique one for last this time around. I'm talking about the Adventures of Square, which is a fantastic Doom Total conversion mod. I'm just going to save you this review and say that it's a fantastic game, and if you like what you see, then you should go play it. It's literally free and doesn't even require a copy of Doom this time around. Although you might be looking at this game and you're probably going, but still, this game looks like it was made by 5-year-olds, or made for 5-year-olds, I should say. And to be fair, it does. To the point where I could easily hand this game to a 5-year-old and not be worried that they'd walk away scarred for life. This literally could be Babby's first Doom mod. This is like the complete opposite of what Doom was as a whole. Instead of demons exploding into piles of meaty chunks, enemies just explode into a wholesome shower of colorful jibs. You know what, that's enough for now. I'm just going to get onto the game itself. In terms of story, which there isn't much to go on, a brilliant scientist, Dr. Octagon, has been kidnapped by a cult known as the Circle of Evil. I know, har har, and guess what? They're all circles, right? I know, it's crazy. And obviously us, being Square, are the only damn person who can do anything about it, so we have to go and save them. They want to take over the world and, I don't know, make math boring or something. Listen, between you and me, calculating the perimeter of a square is way easier than calculating the circumference of a circle. Math was never really my strong suit though, so whatever. Anyways, I've given you enough of a rundown for now. Let's get to the real shit. So the first level here is Welcome to Squaresville, and this one's just great. It's colorful, bright, the music is nice, and it's a perfect way to introduce the game. When we walk outside, we're greeted by some uninvited circle guests, some shanky boys and a nerdy prick with a paint gun. That's right, we do get our hands on some guns in this game. I mean, they're not guns, but they are paint blasters. However, the only thing you have to defend yourself at the beginning of the level is this puny purple paint gun, which is kinda crappy. It's got infinite ammo and makes a decent enough fallback weapon. Luckily for us, the developer is nice enough to throw us a bonus so we can get our hands on a second paint gun in this level, which pretty much rounds off any of the complaints that I may have had about the single. We also get introduced to another new enemy here, these chunky builder guys who fire out cannonballs from the gaping hole in their chest. These things can fire pretty quickly and have a ton of health, so be wary of these guys. And get used to seeing them too, these guys are going to be used in absolute firing squads later on in the game. In fact, a lot of the enemies here seem to take a pretty significant punishment to go down, which this could be due to the difficulty that I'm playing on though, which is quadrilateral damage, and fuck that pun, it's stupid. It's dumb and mathy and I hate it. This difficulty said it was recommended for adept players, and I think I'm pretty adept at FPS games, even though later on that wouldn't follow through very well. I'm also only playing on the second hardest skill because I'm not even remotely good at this game at times. I barely even know where most of the secrets are in this level. I know where all the secret levels are, but that's another story. Oh, what was I talking about? Oh yeah, the enemies being tanky as fuck. Also, I named my save file this because, you know, I just had to. Anyways, back to Squaresville. I will say, this game is very easy, at least right now. It'll get harder much, much later on. Like, other than being able to hand this to a small child, I could probably hand this to someone who's, like, never played an FPS game in their life, and they'd probably get the hang of this pretty well. I mean, you just get overloaded with health pickups in these early maps. I can get almost up to full health right out of the starting area. That's how many there are in this level. These are just tiny 1 HP pickups and bonuses. We're talking about 20 or 50 hit point overloads at times. Not important. What is important is the Uzi, spelled O-O-Z-I, like ooze, because this thing actually fires green goo, not paint. It fires ridiculously fast and has abhorrent spread damage. It becomes my mainstay for close quarters combat, at least early on. We can also pick up some goo-nades, another goo-based weapon. This time it's a capsule-like grenade that leaves a small area of effect around where it explodes. These are incredibly useful and wisely bound to the right mouse button by default. Yet none of the weapons have an alternate fire unless you count being dual-wielded as an alternate firing mode. I suppose it's a trade-off for the game's simplicity. Back to the weapons themselves though, we can get our hands on another one, the shot bow. It's this game's shotgun which fires shot bolts that look like regular shotgun shells, but okay, whatever, I'll suspend my disbelief. If you couldn't tell by the name, it's a shotgun crossbow hybrid, and it's actually pretty solid. Regardless, once we get our hands on it, the level is basically over. Before we leave, we bump into some Tesla drones who come in 3 different flavors. Yellow being the weakest, red being the most dangerous, and blue being somewhat in between. These guys tend to be rather annoying, and also explode when they die, dealing damage if you're too close, so they become a nuisance enemy real quick. Anyways, after we leave Squaresville, we get to sewer side. At the very least, the mapper took this as an opportunity to create a sprawling sewage processing plant. Okay, you know what, this one is actually pretty cool. But first and foremost, meet the Crocobot. Or at least that's what I'm gonna call them. This isn't Doom, I don't have a manual for these kind of things. He's a real tanky boy and shows up all green and mean. Still though, a melee-based enemy in a game where your primary attacks are ranged. Yeah, these guys get shafted real quick. When I said that this level was sprawling, I meant it. You need at least 3 different keys to get through this damn thing. Speaking of keys, there are 6 different color-coded shaped keys in this game. There's a rhombus, a square, a hexagon, a circle, a trapezoid, and then a triangle key. These get flipped into their geometric variants in the next episode, but we'll talk about that when we get to that. Despite the fact that this level is, well, big, it never really gets confusing. Sure, there are side paths, but even then they still reward you with some kind of goodie. Like this one near the start, which will give you the Paint Blaster, which is effectively a paintball-ized ripper cannon from Duke 3D. It becomes the more efficient way to use blue paint instead of the dual paint guns. It's also one of the few accurate offerings in the arsenal. That can become a serious problem later on, as the size of these levels can really ramp up, to the point where I'm like struggling to find ammo because of the fact that I use most of my blue paint for long-range enemies, but, you know, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. I should probably touch on the gameplay, and to say the least, it's remarkably simple, which isn't actually a bad thing. I will say that it never gets repetitive. Like stated numerous times before, this game is so simple that a literal child could pick this up and still be no worse for wear. But there are still a surprising amount of fun, deep mechanics in this game. The core loop of shooting the bad pie man in the face, pie is in 3.14, not the delicious edible kind. Although we can get our hands on that kind of pie too, if you really look. Back to what I was saying though, the core loop of shooting the bad man in the face with the gun is still pretty damn fun, and it never gets old. And you know what, for a game with as few mechanics as this one, that's pretty admirable. Other than the shooting, there are other mechanics. The platforming, the secret hunting, the exploration. All these elements are here to make this game a really enjoyable shoot 'em up. To keep the game from getting boring, the game generally tries to introduce a new mechanic in every level, or at least a new monster. Speaking of new weapons, we can get our hands on another new one here. Okay, well, it's not new, it's just a second Uzi, because of course you can dual wield those too. You might think you'd never go back to the normal one, but you will have to go back to the first one to conserve on ammunition, because these things burn through ammo real quick. Before we leave, we can bump into another new enemy in this large sewage arena. That new enemy being these large, circled yellow pricks with jetpacks and laser guns. They make goofy-ass noises and make a fart sound when they die. You know what, now where have I heard that? Oh no. Whatever, after the assault of enemies, the level is over. Our next map is Upshaped Creek, and this one is an absolute gauntlet, taking place primarily in this large canyon area with some water at the bottom. And of course, that means there's annoying triangular fish to contend with. At first, you might not want to fall in, but, you know, eventually you will, and I mean you should want to anyway, since there are some good things down there for you to collect. I will also say that this is the one where things start really heating up, at least on this skill. That means that I'd actually have to give a couple battles another try. This level is also packed full of ambushes of enemies. You'll be focusing on taking out more pressing threats, then a bunch of, like, you know, security bots start dropping in from the sky and then the battle turns into a fucking clusterfuck. You might think that that one would be the worst ambush, but no. The one here at the bridge, let me tell you, that one's the nasty ambush. After we leave the creek, we get to the paint plant. You know what, this one's just fantastic. Absolutely perfect. It starts off with some iffy platform, but then opens up at this massive area at the start. And of course, the game immediately throws you to the wolves. It teleports in a bunch of jetpackers and circle bots. I barely have enough ammo to take care of them, so I have to go around and collect it before I can actually continue the fight. Thankfully though, once we take the goons out, we can get our hands on the sole melee weapon in the game, which is the defibrillator. It's effective enough at taking on lower tier enemies, but it will damage you if you use it in water, and fuck that idea, it's a dumb mechanic to implement. Should have stayed in Quake for good. Once we get into the plant, the map shifts primarily into a CQC brawl with just a fuck ton of monsters. The number may start out small, but by the end I'd slain the better part of 300 enemies when I left. Fourth map in the game, we're already up to 275-ish monsters. But I never felt it overbearing or sloggy, mainly because the core gameplay is so fun. Anyways, back to the map itself, which is awesome. Absolutely brutal battles in just about every room. Complete paint carnage, it's great. The game throws a new kind of hazard at us though, that being this light blue slop, which is this game's flavor of instant death pit. There's even a new enemy, these tanky, cylindrical security bots who fire at lasers that are damn hard to avoid. They're priority targets from here on out, and I tried to save Uznates from them because that usually slows them down. Once we get out of the main factory floor, we can come to this large outdoor section with another barrage of projectile enemies up on hills. I don't even bother killing all of them, that's how many there are. After we carve a path through the back end of the plant, we end up getting teleported back inside to grab the square key from this caged off area. And once we do, the game will teleport in an entourage of circle drones and builders to catch you off guard. You'll effectively have to walk a tightrope around this pit of liquid hot ooze, which is easier said than done at times. After we get out, use the square key to access a detonator to blow open a wall that leads to some caves where we have one last shootout before the end of the level for good. This level was an absolute blast. Gets an A+ from me. The next level is a minor inconvenience, and fuck that pun, it's terrible. Regardless, the level is still decent fun. Nowhere near the enjoyment of the previous one, but it's still a pretty good time. I don't personally care for this teleporter nonsense here, but it's still a serviceable level. Honestly, this one is probably the only one I'd say is lacking in this episode. Even then, it's still a pretty damn good level. There are some fun fights here and there, as well as a new enemy type. That being these large, magenta-y triangular tanks. They're beefy as hell and are one of the only enemies in the game to have a hit scan attack. One of the hardest enemies we're going to face for a while, and they quickly become a high priority target. More importantly though, we can find this episode's secret level, and if you don't want spoilers for that, go to here. Are they gone? Well, they missed out on this yellow submarine. Why does every Doom mod that I like have to have a Beatles reference in it? The secret level is the Arctic Labs, and this is probably in my top 3 for the episode. It's also a level that I never played until making of this video, so I was completely new to it going in. It's probably the hardest in the episode, just because of the sheer number of enemies crammed in. 223 in total. That includes our old friends like the circle jerks and triangle bots, but also a new enemy, these icy crocobots who shoot out icy flechettes that do a ton of damage when they hit you. Throughout the course of this level, you may have noticed that you'll be picking up a bunch of these red conic hell shells, which will give you a hint that you're about to get your hands on the hell shell launcher, which is effectively this game's BFG. It does great damage and it's pretty plentiful ammo, at least in this level. It becomes my main way of taking out the triangle tanks. The level itself is also ginormous, encompassing a fully decked out Arctic base and a bunch of outdoor areas. At times it can be a bit labyrinthine, but it's serviceable enough for what it is. It's also crammed full of armor pickups like these two aluminium, I think I'm pronouncing that wrong, or you know what, I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, whatever, which give you 200 armor. I actually forgot to talk about the armor system here, since it's a little bit more complex than Doom's. There's 4 different pickups instead of 2. We've got cardboard armor for 50 points, box armor for 100 points, brick for 150, and at the aforementioned, the A armor for 200 points. Yeah, I'm not gonna say that stupid fucking name again. This level still loads you up with 2 of those big boy armor pickups and a silly sphere, which gives you 200 health and 150 armor. So by the end, I'm still leaving with over 100 armor and nearly 200 health. Still though, good map, solid execution. After jumping into this hole, we end up in the spillway, which makes literally no sense, but I'm willing to suspend my disbelief for the funny shape game, I guess. This is probably the largest and most densely populated level in this episode. It's packed full of every single enemy type in the game, and nearly 300 of them. There's also nearly a dozen secrets in this map, and I found almost all of them. Something that isn't a secret that you should still grab though is the quad cannon, which is effectively a direct upgrade to the shot bow. It can fire rapidly 4 shots before reloading and does slightly more damage, I think. And that's the last addition to our arsenal that we'll be getting for quite a while. There's also the introduction of the Devil Sphere, which is effectively just double damage. It helps with the constant barrages of enemies in this level. There's also another new power-up in this map, that being this pot sauce bottle that forces you to run forward, but it'll also shoot out these little fireballs that damage enemies as you run by. Still though, pretty unique. I don't think I've ever seen another power-up like that in another game. After you clear out the spillway here, we can leave and head for the city. Geometropolis. Oh boy, this one's a journey. The main objective of this level is getting all 6 keys to escape, but in the end, that's just second to your survival. As soon as you exit the starting tunnel, you're greeted by an entourage of projectiles being hurled in your direction. From up on rooftops, around corners, practically everywhere. Even then, this level doesn't even have 200 enemies in it. But the way it uses its 165 enemies would make you think that there's way more than that. Luckily for us, we have our fully kitted out arsenal and the game is willing to throw plenty of ammo at us to get the job done. On the topic of the level itself though, it's generally great. I'm a sucker for early FPS city levels and this one definitely scratches that itch. But unlike city levels in Doom 2, this level is actually really good. You can enter almost every building and each one usually has something worthwhile in it. There's also a bunch of different secrets floating around too. Anyways, great map, fantastic execution. After we get all the keys, we can finally leave. The next map is the Fizzopop Factory, and this one is an absolute bloodbath. The first room we enter has a new enemy, that being these cube pricks who fire at projectiles in 3 different flavors. The red and yellow ones are pretty standard, but the purple ones do home in on you, so be careful. Going through this first area would give you the impression that this level is going to be mostly indoor industrial areas. And to be fair, there is some of that here, like this warehouse or this explosive production facility. I'm not too sure on that one, but whatever. But then you walk outside into this enormous area, which opens you up to a full frontal assault of just about everything in the game. Builders, circle bots, magic cubes, they're all here. This is probably one of my favorite fights in the episode. It's just absolute chaos, and it's wonderful. The game also gives you practically free reign over the entire area right off the bat. You could duck straight into one of the buildings, or you could dig around in some side areas for some extra goodies. It's great fun. To actually leave, we need at least 3 keys. A triangle, a circle, and a square key. The triangle and circle keys are pretty easy to obtain, but the square key requires you to find an encrypted passcode disk, which you can use on a computer near the start of the level lower wall, which is a bunch of those magic cubes inside waiting for you. After you clear them out, you can grab the square key, hop it back to the center tower that overlooks the whole facility, and flip a switch that opens the exit doors. And after that, we can finally leave this gauntlet of a level. The next level is the launch base, and I don't know how the factory led here, but you know what, I'm just going to suspend my disbelief again. If you thought the last level was a gauntlet, then boy, you ain't seen nothing yet. The level starts you off with a large combat sequence in this grand open vista, giving you a perfect view of the rocket that we're actually here to catch. This one does start off mildly ball-busting, especially with the introduction of the Spec Ops Circle dudes. They carry oozes and are way more accurate with them than you are. Luckily for us, the game only puts them in close-range environments. At least for now. After the few starting cliff areas, we enter this large warehouse, which is the most densely populated combat sequence of the level. It's also a good place to stock up on ammo for the rest of the level, even though you're probably going to use most of it since there's like half a dozen of those triangle tanks and magical cubes down there to ambush you at the bottom. To actually get the rocket to launch properly, we need 3 discs that have the code for the launch sequence. The first 2 are easy enough to get, but the third one is part of this large combat sequence, which, to be fair, is a pretty fitting way to send off most of the normal enemies. Once we teleport out of said combat sequence, though, we have to face the boss. It's this big-ass robot thing that I honestly couldn't tell you the name of, it doesn't say. He can teleport around the arena like a little bitch, but he also fires his homing missiles as well as a bunch of red ooze bombs that just do a ton of fucking damage. They're awful. The area of effect that they're in also just sticks around for way too long. Despite all of my bumbling and shit, I was still able to take him down on my first try, though. 25. Damn, still had a little fight left in him, eh? After we take it down for good, we loop back to the rocket, input the code, and blast off into space, bound for the moon.
I picked a fine day to be lactose intolerant.
Oh, I always kind of figured the moon was made out of cheese. The first level on offer here is Port Jarlsberg, and this one is almost right off the bat a significant ramp up in challenge. Good, it's about damn time. It starts with a nasty ambush from some unsavory crocobots and commando circles, and all you've got is 2 paint guns and fuck all else. In this first level you'll be hurting for ammo and weaponry. I only ended up getting up a shot bow and a single Uzi out of this first level. The real gimmick for this one, and most of the levels in this episode, is using these here fish bowls as a power-up that lets you breathe in the vacuum of space for a short period of time. They did appear in the first episode, but they were so rare that I never bothered to mention them. Here they're used extensively. You can also jump really high in space because, you know, 0G and all that fun stuff. The whole objective of this level is getting a square key to raise this wall that'll let us use a glider craft to get down to the surface of the moon. That's easier said than done considering the fact that this mapper wasn't shy of throwing cylinder and circle bots right at you off the bat, even without most of our arsenal. I just took to throwing grenades and spraying with the Uzi. After we clear out the station, we landed on the surface for the final cheesy money shot we've been waiting for. God, I can only imagine how bad it smells. After that grand vista, the level is basically over, though. The next level is the Butterforge, and this one was pretty solid. Not fantastic, just fine. We can get our hands on some more weaponry, like the Paint Blaster, which I've missed with a short level that I didn't have it. You're gonna fucking need it, too, since this level was full of robots and magic cubes and triangle tanks right off the bat. This one really leans in on the oxygen mechanics, since most of it takes place outside. I never found that the oxygen supply was too big of a problem, but I never actually ran out of it in the end, although I did get close on numerous occasions. And I think I also just killed myself a couple times to test out if it would do that. Believe me, it does. Also, a lot of the levels moving forward are going to make full use of the insane 0G jump height and force you to make crazy fucking moon jumps, which can be a bit annoying. It'll get worse. You better be savoring this level too, since the next one is probably my least favorite in the entire game. Oh boy, the Cheese Crater. This one is probably my least favorite level in the game. It's not bad per se, it's just long. So long to the point where I'm giving it its own section. On average, most of the levels in this chapter took me about 20-ish minutes. This one took me 47 minutes to beat. No, I'm not mad, not one fucking bit! The main gimmick in this level is, well, big. Big to the point where I can comfortably house the better part of 500 enemies. The crater itself is an absolute sprawl, encompassing various different cheesy rivers and other dairy-related biomes. And remember how I said the platform was gonna get worse? It got worse. The jumps themselves aren't bad, it's just that there's so much platforming. But then it starts to encompass taking performance-enhancing fizzy lifting drinks to jump bigger gaps, and then it just starts to get repetitive. And mind you, this is like 20 minutes in. At this point, I had already tracked through this level like 2 or 3 times. Sure, the map is visually impressive. I'm sure it must have been a bitch to set up properly in the editor, but at the scale itself just isn't enough to make it fun to traverse. At the very least, this level is nice enough to link all of the buildings together with teleporters that lead back to the start of the map, where you can teleport to any other point of interest you'd like. My only really important goal is the armory, since I can finally get my hands on the Hellshell launcher, which I've been picking up ammo for the last, I don't know, 25 minutes of this level, and believe me, you are gonna fucking need it too. The game is going to be throwing as much automated security at you for the better part of, well, the rest of this game, basically, so get used to using it. I was struggling with the security bots because I ran into grenades like 10 minutes into this level, and the game still keeps throwing them at you regardless. Also, meet the Strongman. He's a tanky bastard who dashes at you and just deals a ton of damage. If you're not in melee range, he'll try to lasso you in with a chain whip thing. They also call you Goofy, silly names when they attack you, so that's fun, I guess. Another enemy that I completely glossed over are these weird milk eyeball creatures. I think they're native to the moon, which makes the fact that they're kind of chill with the circles kind of strange, but whatever, I suppose it's not a big deal. I may have said that this level was bad, but I want to recant that statement. For what it is, it's actually not bad. It's just somewhat tedious after the halfway point, but still it can be pretty fun at times. Even at the end of the game, this is still my least favorite level, and even then it was serviceable at its worst. And if that's not a testament to the game's quality, then I'm not sure what is. The next level is In a Milky Way, and this one is honestly kind of boring. It's nowhere near as hard or as tedious as the previous level, but that didn't stop me from having to play it at least like 3 different times. On the plus side though, I ended up being able to beat it in just over 10 minutes on my final attempt. In terms of the level itself, there isn't a ton to talk about, other than they're these big milky eye bastards who have like paint elementals. And by that I mean they suck and I hate them. They can spawn the normal milk balls until you kill them, and they were already the most annoying enemy in the game, so having an enemy that does nothing but spawn them is just great, you know, that's just fantastic. We can get our hands on a quad cannon though, which does slightly mitigate the pain elemental bastards, and basically the entire level's difficulty as a whole. More importantly, however, we can find the exit to the secret level, and if you don't want spoilers, then skip to this timestamp up on screen right now. Are they gone? They missed out on this cowboy cow, which is something I honestly didn't know I needed in my life. The secret level is the Heart of Hexus, and this one's actually pretty fun. Hexus with an H, by the way. The beginning section is kind of boring, with the game spawning in hordes of flying enemies for you to take care of every time you pick up some random shit, but I'll give it a pass since we do get some new enemies. They're not really new, they're just reskins, but still, they're great. The first one is the security cylinder, which gets a matching bandana and cowboy hat, as well as some new country bumpkin-ass voice lines. There's also the cowboys themselves, who are just normal circle runs with 2 guns instead of 1, and also some more country bumpkin-ass voice lines. They only ever appear in this level, which makes them pretty unique. The real star of the show, though, is this level's ghost town section. Calling it a ghost town is kind of disingenuous, considering that it's the most chaotic section of the level. I ended up doing a giant donut around the entire circle and alerted pretty much all of the enemies. After you clear out the town, you have to circle back to unlock a barn or church or some shit, I don't know what this building is. And then you clear it out and the level's basically over. Oh wait, I forgot about the cow launcher, you can't forget that one. The next level is the Wild Blue Yonder, and this one is probably my favorite in the episode. It's a complete departure from the normal yellows of the cheesy surface. Instead, we have a lush blue cheese forest, which is actually something the cheese movie would probably have. There's also this Ive forest and this expansive jelly basin, which is something that I didn't think a dairyman would have, but whatever. There's also jump pads which take form of the blocks of jello, and these things can propel you ridiculously high enough to the point where they can easily kill you if you're not paying attention. And finally, we have the center area, which takes place in this white void. This level's just a visual feast in general. Speaking of the void, you'd think that it would be a really long fall with a kill floor at the bottom. At least it's what I assumed when I fell in and actually died. But you can actually get down to the bottom in this surprisingly elaborate secret area where you climb down through this gulch and it's filled with cows and mushrooms for some reason. The reward at the very end is a happy sphere and some aluminum armor. It also spits you out inside of this bizarre hellish tree, which is pretty cool too. In the end, I needed both of those things because this level was absolutely kicking my ass. Apart from the one bad fall I had, I never died due to the enemies in this level, even though I did get close once or twice, since the mapper put enemies fucking everywhere. Once you enter the Jelly Bowl, you're basically open to attack from just about every angle that you can see. Other than the constant enemy barrages and the overuse of the paint elementals, this level's just great though. Solid all around. It does the whole big just because it can be big thing way better, at least in my opinion. The next level is Geometric Engineering, and this one is kinda hit or miss for me. Maybe I'm just jaded because I've been playing this game for God knows how long at this point. This level is back to being cheesy, even if we spend most of it inside. Not too many notes on this one, I'm just kinda burnt out from playing this game non-stop for like 3 days at this point. There are some neat additions though. There's a new enemy, that being these mechanized boys who are like mini-boss versions of the episode 1 final boss. They have all the same attacks, homing missiles, lasers, and those annoying area of effect red grenades. We could also pick up the final addition to our arsenal, that being this crescent-shaped scepter. Crescent-shaped scepter, wow, I'm horrible at this. A crescent-shaped scepter. And you know what, it's not half bad. It has some weird RNG spread bullshit going on, and it also fires marbles, which is a little bizarre, but still though, fun weapon. And what is this switch lower, Oh, they're like making people here, that's not cool. That wasn't a twist I was expecting, but you know, I guess that's something, I guess. I make good use out of the scepter during the final battle of this level, which just throws a couple dozen enemies at you with fuck all fanfare. They're set up in this weird camp sort of joint for some reason. Flipping a switch will open the gate to the exit and reveal a strongman and 3 of those mech bastards. I just ran past them because I was fed up with the fucking game at this point. The next level after this is the Cheddar Combs, and I have to say this one's pretty damn fun. It pulls the big just because it can be thing again, and it's basically like that for every level in the game at this point, but you know what, it doesn't matter. But unlike the Cheese Crater, this one actually takes place almost entirely indoors, which is a good thing. Sure, navigation can be a bit of a fucking nightmare. At least you've got the auto map, right? In terms of gameplay, this one is pretty damn fun too. There's plenty of secret nooks and crannies to dig around in, and just a gobsmack number of monsters at this point. Pretty much every level from here on out is going to have at least 200 enemies in it. There's no new enemies in this level, it's just you versus hordes of monsters. I forgot to mention there's another secret exit in this level. That's right, we've got 2 secret levels in 1 episode. And if you don't want spoilers, go to here. Okay, the secret level is the Great Pyramid of Gouda, and this one is my second least favorite in the episode. If you take the enemy count of the Cheese Crater and cram them into the cramped hallways of the Cheddar Combs, you get this level. Oh yeah, and also sprinkle in the cursed IED pyramids. They suck. Yeah, they make the above ground sections of this map terrible. They hide these little cheesy spike clusters, and whenever you get close they pop up and just fucking explode in your face. But they don't appear in every single cluster, so you'll be on edge every time you cross one of these clusters, so they might be fucking booby-trapped. And the introduction of the IED pyramids really does shoot this level in the foot, because the underground sections are really great, and hey, wouldn't you know, they don't have any of the pyramids in them. I think I'm making a bit of a correlation there, but I'll have to get back to you on that one. There's a bunch of cool tomb areas in these underground caves, and there's just a bunch of different little secrets tucked in these cracks and tunnels. It's great fun. It's just a shame that the good stuff is put after the cock and ball torture of the IED desert. You know what, I'm just gonna move on. The next level is a giant leap for shape, kinda. You know what, this one's actually pretty damn fun. For the time being, we're back to doing vacuum surface shenanigans, which is fine because you've only got like 3 more levels to go. I honestly couldn't tell you what this level is supposed to be, it's just some generic facility. No earth-shattering discoveries or IED pyramids, just some comfy jibbitude near. Anyways, what was I talking about? Oh yeah, I remember. Yeah, there really isn't a whole lot to go off of here. This is just a pretty solid time all around, and because of that, I think it might be one of my favorite levels of the episode. The next level is the Queso Chasm. This one definitely has more going on right off the bat. It starts off pretty standard with this little warehouse, but then you walk out into this giant open vista, and frankly, it does look pretty damn cool. It's a full-on queso volcano, and it shows. Hell, one of the first things you do is forcibly make the cheese erupt and rise in an admittedly awful platforming section, but the scenery around it really amplifies it. After some queso rising shenanigans, the level is basically just more combat. At the very end, though, we have this castle-like arena section, which has been engulfed by the cheesy hellfire. It's actually pretty ominous and completely clashes with the rest of the level. Then you flip the switch and we get introduced to a new enemy, that being these ghost fucks who shoot out rainbow beams and sort of kind of teleport around. They're mostly harmless, I just fire hellshell at them and then I'll take them out in one hit. Or I'll just use some shot bolts, both seem to work fine. After we've taken another small gaggle of enemies, the level is basically over and we enter the final level of the game. The final level is Arcanum, and this one might have actually shaped up to be one of my top 3 for the entire game. This one is just fucking brutal. I may have said something about this being easy enough for a small child to beat, but at this point I was even struggling, and I've been playing these kind of games for years at this point. It starts off not too ball-busting, but then we get to this foreboding spiral stairway where we get contacted by the boss himself.
Have you come to bear witness to my glorious return?
Yeah, I'm sure I'll end up seeing it through for better or for worse. The next section is split up between 2 sections, where you have to get the star key and the crescent key. Both are locked up behind some pretty grueling combat. Honestly, this level would be probably the hardest in the game for me, right behind the IED pyramid. In the section where you need to get the star key, you need to raise this red soupy shit that hurts you enough so that you can actually cross this area and get the actual key. The problem is that this is sort of timed since the devil soup actually does hurt you, and there's only a handful of Enviro soup pickups down there. 2 of which are actually located under the soup, which makes it kind of hard to get them if you don't have one. Luckily for me, I never ran out, but that could prove to be a problem if you do. The final layer also introduces a new enemy, that being these reskins of the ghost guys who have more health and do more damage. I didn't really care for them. I don't really like reskin enemies in games, if you couldn't tell. After I grab the star key, I head back over to the section with the crescent key, and this one's somehow more difficult than the last one. With consistent ambushes with the mechs and the spooky boys, it can be a real grueling time. Then there's this insane, like, fucking Mario Castle-like obstacle course. Then sometime after that, we just get dropped into this absolute fucking chaos here. You know, let's just go kill the boss. Once again, I don't have a name for this bad boy, so I'm gonna just call him, I'm gonna call him Sour Cream and Onion Pringles. Sour Cream and Onion Pringles doesn't seem too terribly difficult. He's a giant meatball of a target, which makes him easy to hit with our hoses and weapons. But then he starts to do shit like lower the bridges and change the water to the demon soup, and worst of all, he'll bring up those fire traps for some reason on some of the islands, making them a no-fly zone when you're trying to not get damaged by the fucking hurt floor. He still ends up being so bumbling that I'm able to take him out on my second try, even though I've never faced him before. After that, we come face to face with Dr. Octagon, and he's got some more choice words. Apparently, he was helping them bring the demon into our world. That's a bit extreme. Sour Cream and Onion Pringles wasn't even a hard boss fight, mostly. Apparently, the good doctor wanted the recognition for some of his work, so he thought the idea to be buddy-buddy with the bad man instead of just helping Square for some fucking reason would be a good idea. Regardless, we try to shoot the old man, and he swiftly defibs us and takes our gun. His plan is to go into this portal and try to find the Omnigon or some fucking weird shape shit like that. He thinks it's some superpowered thing that'll grant the wielder whatever it desires, and he wants it. Regardless, he ends up taking the portal and we have to follow suit. Unfortunately for us, I don't ever think the saga will continue. You see, this mod is old. Episode 2 came out in 2018, which was, 5 years ago, Jesus. The most recent update on the Big Brick Twitter was without the announcement of one of the artists, Slacks, had unfortunately passed away, which I'm sure didn't help with the already likely slow development time. Not to mention other factors like COVID and trying to work on a free project that requires years of love and work. It's easy to see why this could have been shelved, leaving it to be a forgotten footnote in modding history. Which is a shame because this mod kicks ass. It's genuinely one of the most fun experiences I've had in a long time with an FPS game, let alone a Doom mod. You can see the unprecedented level of care and love that's been put into this game. From the weapons, the characters, the levels, the music, it all just clicks together in a way that I haven't seen from a game in a very long time. For the price of literally nothing, I absolutely encourage you to go and give this game a try. It's one hell of a good time. While Square may never have his finest hour, he will forever live on in my heart. You know, that's too sad of a note to end on. Look at this cowboy cow. Isn't that awesome?